It's deep into the night on the Western Front, 1916. You're an Allied soldier, and tonight, you're part of a select few chosen to carry out a dangerous mission. Success means taking out enemy defenses, gaining crucial intel, and possibly capturing prisoners. Failure means certain death, because you have the unfortunate fate of one of the worst roles in World War I. You are a trench raider. Your mission requires crossing enemy lines and can only be completed under cover of darkness. During the day, the German sentries would be able to see you coming a mile off. Your guns will be useless on this mission, given the need for stealth and the close quarters you're about to find yourself in. Instead, you carry melee weapons, a trench knife, a set of knuckle dusters, and a shovel with its end sharpened to a deadly point. You keep to the shadows, trying to find cover where possible. Heavy artillery and chemical weapons have already cleared most of the foliage and left this part of the French countryside a barren, muddy wasteland. It won't recover for another century. Despite the need to be careful, time is also of the essence. Most successful trench raids are done in a matter of minutes. Your objective is to get in, grab anything that looks important, kill anyone who gets in your way, and get out. Your team reaches the parapet. A German sentry manages to fire off a single pistol shot in your direction, but you have the element of surprise on your side. While you have the sentry distracted, a fellow soldier sneaks up behind him and slits his throat before he can wake the rest of his squadron. He collapses, bleeding and wheezing, into the wet mud. Now, without anyone to raise the alarm, you have the chance to explore the rest of the trench. As silently as possible, you search around the dank, freezing dugout, your eyes barely adjusting to the dark. You're looking for a map with battle plans, maybe a telegram from command that would help you disrupt supply chains, anything that would give your country an advantage against the Germans. You look down at the German sentry who is still bleeding out in the mud at your feet. The recruitment posters in London promised a clean, civilized war, but there's nothing civilized about this. Your worst worries used to be household chores, beating your little brother in backyard cricket, or whether or not your crush liked you back. Now, you're a cold-blooded killer, and every day you have to fight tooth and nail for your survival. This isn't at all what you were sold when you enlisted. The stories you grew up with from your grandfather painted war as a noble pursuit. With the new century had come huge leaps in technological and social progress, leaps which, as war broke out in 1914, promised a new, cleaner, more civilized form of war. The papers on both sides made the bold claim that the conflict would be over before Christmas. Even though that was 2 years ago, people still believed the lie. It'll be over any day now. And you, as a bright-eyed 19-year-old, believe it too. Over 1 million British men enlisted in the armed forces in just the first year alone. The only thing stopping you from being among them was that you were too young at the time. 1916 was the first year the British government introduced conscription due to dwindling enlistment numbers, but you were one of the few who did enlist. You're a good patriot, and you wanted to do your part to stop the Germans from moving west. As soon as you were old enough, you signed up, along with many of your school friends. Once you were given the Army physical, you were sworn in by the recruitment officers, given your basic kit, and just like that, you were a fully fledged British soldier. During basic training, the atmosphere was one of jubilant excitement. At times, it felt more like a field trip than a life-or-death situation. It was 6 months of you and your cohort on an Army base, getting ready to travel together and experience a part of the world that most of you had never seen before. Some boys were more scared than others. They'd heard the stories about trench fever and toxic gases. Some of them had brothers or friends who had joined up in 1914 and never came home. But still, you all did your best to keep spirits high, even though training was intense. You woke up at 5:30, had breakfast, then performed drills until noon. Target practice, gymnastics, skirmishing drills, entrenching drills, bayonet combat, and marching. It covered everything you needed to know. You joked around with your fellow recruits. You sang old songs like It's a Long Way to Tipperary as you marched. You made fast friends with boys from all over the United Kingdom. Yorkshire, Lancashire, Cheshire, Norfolk, Welsh, even some from as far away as Scotland. When your 6 months were up, you got a hearty send-off and were given 2 days' rations for the trip. The first leg was by sea, Then once in France, it would be a long journey by boxcars to the Western Front. The attitude of excitement didn't immediately dissipate when you got to the front. At first, the bright flashes and booming rattle of artillery and machine gun fire felt like a fireworks show. Star shells burst all along the front line, lighting up the sky for miles. In your new positions, you and your comrades settled into a new routine in the trench. There are far worse places to be in this war, but the trenches of the Western Front were still miserable places to find yourself in. Each trench is unique, given the fact that they must be constructed quickly with whatever's at hand. Some are simple ditches reinforced with chicken wire and wooden planks. Others are lined with concrete. Some have specific purposes like communication, supply lines, and trenches meant for aiding in the transport of the wounded and dying. But all are a bleak maze of interconnected ditches stretching across Allied territory. Each trench was about 6 feet, 1.83 meters deep, by 3.5 feet, 1 meter wide, with the frontline trenches closest to the battlefield containing a fire step, where soldiers could step up and aim their guns into no man's land. The trenches of the Western Front add up to over 25,000 miles or 40,233 kilometers, stretching from the North Sea all the way to Switzerland, and you and your fellow soldiers were the ones who had to dig all of that, inch by inch, over days, weeks, and months. At the start of the year, life in the trenches had been bearable. A canteen, tobacco, and food, though your options were limited. Fresh food obviously couldn't survive transport, but you have access to canned pantry staples and bacon. But staying in the trench wasn't always required. The British Army recognized the importance of minimizing exhaustion, so soldiers were able to take excursions to pre-approved cafes called estaminets. You could also hope for a billet, a chance to spend a few days above ground with a local civilian family. The war had taken many of their sons and husbands already, so they were eager for the company, even if having a soldier in the house would serve as a painful reminder of the toll of this seemingly endless war. Every day you wake before dawn, just so you could be prepared in case of a German raid. You have to eat, wash up, clean your space, and repair your gear while under the constant threat of shelling. Down in the trenches, it doesn't feel like a fireworks show anymore. Within your first week on the front, you see a German shell obliterate a section of the trench. 2 men were killed, and a third was left with injuries so bad that he needed to be taken to a field hospital. These are boys you'd gotten to know during basic training. Just that morning, you had all been laughing together. You'd spent so much time talking about your hopes and dreams, about what your plans were once it was all over and you got to go back to England. Now, they're gone from your life forever. Their families would only learn of their fate secondhand through a coldly bureaucratic, pre-printed letter from the records office, with only a few blank sections left for personal details. Sir/Madam, it is my painful duty to inform you that a report has been received from the War Office notifying the death of number, rank, name, regiment, which occurred on date at location. This report is to the effect that he, cause of death. Any small comforts you could take for yourself in the trench stop when the rains start. The winter of 1916 is the harshest winter France has seen in 36 years, with near freezing temperatures and constant rain. Roofs over the trenches are rare, and with how much soil has been turned up by bombardment and digging the trenches themselves, the battlefield quickly turns into an impassable quagmire. Supply chains are disrupted due to the difficult terrain, leaving hard dog biscuits as your only option for food most days once the canned beans run out. The trench walls start to erode and fill with mud, up to your knees in some places. If you're lucky, the mud will be watery. Though it's freezing cold and filthy, at least you can wade through it. In other places, the mud is so thick that you sink into it like quicksand, unable to move an inch. You put down duckboards, wooden planks that allow you to walk over the mud, but it's only a temporary solution. These cold, wet conditions bring about new dangers too. Food and toiletries run the risk of being contaminated, and the trenches become infested with rats and insects seeking food, warmth, and shelter from the rain. Latrines run the risk of flooding, meaning that the stagnant puddles of muddy water quickly become infested with bacteria. Infectious fever burns through the trench like wildfire, spread by body lice. Symptoms of trench fever include headaches, pain in the eyeballs, muscle aches, and loss of appetite. The worst part of the infection lasts for 5 days, but sufferers remain contagious for 2 weeks. By the end of the Great War, between 1/5 and 1/3 of all British troops reported ill will have been cases of trench fever. Even just standing in the water for too long is a risk. If you can't find a way to dry and warm your feet, you run the risk of getting the dreaded trench foot. It's a condition as disgusting as it is incapacitating. First, your feet start to itch, then the skin turns blue, then as they become increasingly cold and waterlogged, they swell painfully inside your boots until the skin splits. Onset can be as soon as 10 hours. But perhaps the most brutal condition you've seen in your fellow soldiers is one that isn't a sickness of the body, but a sickness of the mind. Some display it in a mild sense, suffering from persistent tinnitus, headaches, tremors, and trouble sleeping. Others seem almost catatonic, suddenly unable to speak. During a round of enemy shelling, when a shell blew the roof off from above you, you saw one of the other soldiers drop to the ground, shrieking and trying to dig through the dirt below him. He carried on like that for a while before going completely limp. Though his eyes stayed open, he was unresponsive and needed to be carried out on a stretcher. Cases of erratic behavior like this are discussed in hushed tones by your peers and your superiors alike. Some say this kind of madness, which they call shell shock, is the result of brain damage from repeated percussive force. Others call it weakness of character and think that men who react irrationally during battle ought to be tried and executed for cowardice. Either way, men experiencing shell shock are taken away to a hospital back home where they will be subject to electroshock therapy. Those who have been rendered unable to speak from their trauma may also be treated by having electric shocks administered to their throat muscles and lit cigarette ends being put out on their tongues. Every day there's a new section of trench to extend and repair with whatever's on hand. Wooden planks, sandbags, sheets of metal. Every week, more of the boys you came in with, more of your friends, are sent over the top to try and gain territory. You don't have to go over the top every day. Over the course of the Great War, it's estimated that soldiers like you spent more time playing football than going over the top. Life as a soldier in the trenches consists mostly of long periods of inaction, broken up by bursts of extreme carnage and violence. Though you and your fellow soldiers play games, make trips into town, and write letters home to keep distracted, there's always that dread in the back of your mind. Today might be quiet, but what if tomorrow isn't? And the dread only worsens the longer you go without being bombarded with German shells. Going over the top involves leaving the trench and rushing out into no man's land. Your aim is just to shoot as many enemy combatants as you can, all the while avoiding being blown apart by artillery shelling or getting tangled in barbed wire. It's the worst part of the battle by far, the part where you're most likely to die. Some of them come back fine, some even bringing back prisoners. Others come back gravely injured by enemy bullets and barbed wire. Some of them never come back at all. The men whose bodies are intact enough to be identified and who it's safe to move are buried close to the battlefield. Those who it's unsafe to move are often left out in the open long enough to decay past the point of recognition. They can only be buried when it's finally safe to move the body. Others aren't so lucky. The ones directly hit by shells are usually instantly obliterated beyond the point of even resembling a human body, just a stinking pink mist in the air. Whatever disembodied parts their comrades can scavenge are searched for any features at all that could serve as identification. Dog tags, patches, personal effects, before being buried, if it's even possible to bury them. In the battle you're fighting, the Battle of the Somme, the British Army saw over 57,000 casualties on the first day alone. Almost 20,000 of those casualties were deaths. Going over the top is done early in the morning, around 7:30 in most cases. You've been over the top once before. Your miraculous survival is probably why your superiors have chosen you for the trench raid. You got the orders the night before, telling you to be ready to go over the lid at 7:30. You wake at dawn the next morning, having slept fitfully in your damp, cold bunk. A thick fog rolls in around 6 a.m. For a while, you and your fellow soldiers dare to hope that the fog would lower visibility enough that the Germans wouldn't be able to target you as accurately. But this is a new era of warfare, one where accuracy isn't as high a priority. The artillery bombardment has been going on for days. You feel your heart rattle in your chest with every bang and whiz and deep earth-shaking boom. Planes circle above, piloted by spotters ready to relay your location back to the enemy's sentries. Through the pounding in your ears, you hear the order.
20 minutes to go, boys.
You look to the men on either side of you and steel yourself. Someone starts up a chorus of It's a Long Way to Tipperary, like you all used to do back in marching drills. 100 voices join in, and through the songs you sing together, you slowly find your courage. 20 minutes pass. It's time. You scramble out of the trench and into the cold morning air, brandishing your bayonet knife. A mist hangs over no man's land. Your heart is pounding as you let out a guttural battle cry. The snipers on sentry duty and your own army's artillerists provide you with some level of cover, taking out German gunmen and blowing holes in enemy defensive lines. But still, you have to dodge barbed wire, craters, and the bodies of your fallen comrades. The crows have been picking at some of them, but the sound of the artillery has long since scared them away. You charge at the German trench, which from 180 feet or 55 meters away looks like a black wave only sometimes broken up by the muzzle flash of a rifle. You stumble over the remains of a charred body, desperately trying to keep your feet. You hear a German artillery shell scream overhead. Then your world turns black. You awaken with a piercing whistle in your ears. Your head is pounding. Mud clings to your face. The bitter scent of earth and flesh floods your senses. Looking over the battlefield, you see your friends being cut down by German machine guns or turned into pink mist by shells. Someone from basic training falls in front of you, their lifeless eyes staring right at you. You have a choice. Continue the charge, or wait it out and hope. Your breath hangs in the air as you grip a discarded rifle. Then you stagger to your feet. The day ends with more men dead and no meaningful territorial gains on either side. This is how it's been for a while. Despite the sheer volume of casualties, the pace of this battle and many other battles on the Western Front have been agonizingly slow. Territory is often gained and immediately lost. Forts are captured and surrendered again within days. Whole weeks can pass with no new successes. Your only real respite comes at night, when the barrage finally stops. But even though it feels calmer, you aren't safe. The British conduct trench raids, but so do the Germans, and the Germans are the first to start throwing poison gas into the mix. You're lucky that by the time you've signed up, the British have developed effective countermeasures against gas shelling. In 1915, when chlorine gas was first used in combat, the only thing to counteract it was to hold a damp cloth over your nose and mouth to take advantage of the gas's solubility in water and stop it from entering your lungs. Now, of course, the enemy is more likely to use phosgene, harder to detect and several times deadlier, with symptoms that can take days to manifest. After your trench was hit by a Green Cross artillery shell, you've seen men who seemed to get out of it fine suddenly keel over the next day from delayed phosgene exposure. But at least now you have access to purpose-made cloth masks and goggles, which stop the worst of the chemical's toxic effects. You carry both in your kit at all times. Britain uses phosgene too, even though its use is controversial. Lieutenant General Sir Charles Ferguson calls it, quote, a cowardly form of warfare which does not commend itself to me or other English soldiers. But whatever gets the job done gets the job done, and in warfare, all that matters is that you kill more of your enemy's troops than they kill yours. And so far, Britain has actually been doing surprisingly well when it comes to gas. British gas shells are filled with a compound called White Star, which is a mix of equal parts chlorine and phosgene, giving their gas attacks the deadliest properties of both. This is much more effective than the German Cross compound, which uses the less soluble and toxic diphosgene as its base. Still, when all is said and done, it's the bloodlust and fury of men and their weapons in direct combat that will win this war for one side or the other. Which brings you back to tonight, where you've been chosen to take on another clandestine trench raid. You don't sign up to be part of the raiding party. It's a high-risk mission for little reward. You and your fellow raiders are selected, then subjected to special training to make sure that you could get across no man's land, get into the enemy trench, and get back out in as little time as possible. You practice in a training area where the whole trench system has been mapped out, allowing you to plot your movements accurately. The orders always come from some general who you've never met, 30 miles or 48 kilometers behind the lines. There are a number of reasons for the raids you've been on so far. Some are just reconnaissance, in order to have a better lay of the land for daylight operations. You're instructed to go over, and if the Germans come over, disengage immediately. This always seemed like a futile, stupid exercise to you, a total waste of time that risks so many lives for relatively banal information. Compared to a trench raid, you prefer going over the top during the day. At least then you have a fair chance. The trench raid puts you squarely in enemy territory. You ask the officer several times, "Is there a reason for coming out?" But you've never once been given a straight answer. The closest response you get is your officer saying that they're necessary and important to find out what troops are in the line opposite to yours.
A soldier must get accustomed to getting out into no man's land,
He says,
not to feel that he must be safe in a trench.
Other reasons for trench raids have been to disable enemy equipment, seize maps, or other important documents. Sometimes it's just to make sure the enemy troops are too scared to sleep. But this time, he tells you that the top brass needs good intel. So tonight, you and your team have been instructed to take prisoners to see if they can be interrogated. You can't help but think that if the information is so valuable to the general, maybe he should go down into the trench himself. But you know if you say this, you'll get court-martialed. In the days before the raid, other soldiers are sent out into no man's land to cut as much barbed wire as they can without being noticed. They lay telephone lines so you can maintain communication with the men back at base. There are also listening posts, about 60 feet or 18 meters out from the front line, where another soldier will be listening in case anything goes wrong. Even these preparations can be deadly. 4 men are sent to cut wire and set up the listening post for this raid. They're supposed to be back in before sunrise, but the wire is harder to cut than expected, and it takes them too long. As the sun starts to rise, their silhouettes become visible from the German trench. The 4 men have to run back, dodging enemy fire. None die, but some are luckier than others. One officer is shot in the foot as he runs. Before the raid, you're stripped of most of the kit you've come to rely on. It's to keep you light and mobile. Despite this war supposedly being more mechanized and modern than any war that came before it, when it comes to trench raids, it's still as barbaric as medieval warfare. Your group is small, less than 10 men. The riflemen of your group have only 50 rounds of ammo each. 2 of you are carrying a haversack full of Mills hand grenades, 2 in case the first bomb thrower runs out. But you and many of your fellow raiders are armed only with knives and blunt instruments, and you'll be expected to fight the enemy hand-to-hand once you're in the German trench. The night of the raid, you all dip into your rum rations to gather your courage. You and your cohort crawl on your bellies across no man's land. It's eerily quiet compared to the constant deafening noise of battle during the day. Despite the mud and the stench of death that surrounds you, you have to stay low to the ground. The German sentries are watching the battlefield like hawks, waiting to spot even the slightest hint of movement in the darkness. It's not just the Germans you need to worry about either. Trench raids come with an increased risk of friendly fire. Allied sentries are also keeping vigilant for German raiders, and it's hard to tell friend from foe in the pitch black. You and your team crawl toward the enemy trench when a small orange glow cuts through the dark. Then you see him, a sentry, staring across no man's land, watching right in your direction. You stop breathing. One wrong move, and everyone dies. Slowly, you inch forward through the mud. You watch as one of your men slips soundlessly into the trench, landing just behind the sentry. Time slows to a crawl. Every muscle in your body locks tight as he creeps forward through the darkness. The sentry still hasn't noticed. The knife drives into his throat, a wet crunch. Blood sprays across the trench wall. The sentry chokes violently, clawing at the blade as horrible gurgling sounds spill from his mouth. For one terrifying second, you think he's about to scream. His legs buckle, his body twitches. Then he goes completely still. Once the sentry has been dispatched, you're free to drop down into the trench. You move as silently as you can, your footsteps muffled by the damp, muddy surroundings. Aside from what army you serve, there probably isn't much of a difference between the average German soldier and yourself. You both shipped out here out of a sense of patriotic duty, only to find yourselves trapped in the wet, freezing dirt, waiting around for the enemy to make the next move, and surrounded on all sides by death. But you can't think about that. You've got a job to do. You take the whole maze one section at a time, with the rifleman leading the way, bayonet fixed as he turns each corner. The bomb thrower clutches his grenades, ready to unleash carnage. You rush through the trenches, the walls press tight on both sides. Every turn looks the same. The narrow passages make it feel like you're moving further into German territory. It's one blind turn after another. You have no idea what's around the next bend. Left, right, another junction. The trench twists endlessly. The air reeks of blood, wet dirt, and burnt powder. Somewhere nearby, boots splash through mud you can't see. Then comes the shout. German voices erupt through the maze. They found the sentry, and they know you're here. The trench comes alive around you, boots hammering over wooden walkways and officers barking orders. It feels like the German army is flooding in from every direction. For one desperate second, you think about running, but there's nowhere to go. If they trap you down here, it's over. The Germans will turn the trench into a grave, but your training kicks in. You don't need to kill them all. You just need to survive long enough to escape. There's only one problem. You can't leave yet, not without a prisoner. A shape suddenly bursts from the darkness ahead, a German soldier charging straight at you with his bayonet raised. Steel crashes against steel. You barely deflect the first thrust. Your rifles scrape together in the narrow trench. He swings again, and the blade tears across your right arm. Pain explodes through you. You stagger back against the trench wall as blood runs down your sleeve. The German lunges again. Gritting your teeth, you rip your trench club free. It's built for this exact situation. You swing with everything you have. The club crashes into the back of his neck with a sickening crack. He collapses instantly into the mud at your feet. It feels exhilarating, netting even a small win for you and your crew, but it's too little too late as more Germans rush the trench, armed with pistols, shooting at you. The bomb thrower yells for you to duck as he tosses a grenade into the fray, taking out a couple of men and wounding many more. But all this noise is only going to attract more attention. Your comrades call for you to follow them back out of the trench. You look back to the German soldier you knocked out and decide you have to leave him. Whatever he could tell you, it wouldn't be worth it. Maybe you're a coward for thinking that, but in the moment, this time, you choose to survive. You scramble over the edge of the trench, having gained nothing. One of your comrades, the first bomb thrower, is shot in the back by a German Luger pistol and slides back down into the mud with a pained yelp. Two other men risk their own lives and hoist him up by the arms. He makes it over, barely, but he's badly hurt, and there's a chance he won't make it all the way back. You wonder if the soldier you unsuccessfully tried to kidnap is being helped by his fellow men right now as well. The sound of gunfire behind you as you crawl through the mud drives that thought away. No matter how much you have in common with the German soldiers, this is a war. Their purpose is to kill you, just as your purpose is to kill them. You scurry back across no man's land, through mud and over dead bodies. When you reach the Allied side, you call out, so they'll know not to shoot at you. The officers are disappointed that you were unable to apprehend a prisoner, and now the Germans will be on high alert. It will be impossible to attempt another raid for several days at least. You collapse back into the Allied trench, still covered in enemy blood, and having gained absolutely nothing. The Germans will likely retaliate in the morning. And then, in a few days, your commanding officer will hand you your sharpened shovel and force you to do it all over again. Out here, that's the only thing you can ever be sure of.